Tucked away in the crypt of a 19th century church, the Royal London Hospital has a museum covering the history of the hospital and also the wider history of medicine in the East End.
Welcome, Derek, to the Royal London Hospital Museum. My name is Richard Monier and I'm Archivist Curator here. We show a number of exhibits on the hospital and the history of the Royal London, and also nursing and medical education. We've got nursing uniforms, we've got works of art, items about dentistry, and we've got a little exhibit on the Whitechapel murders and Jack the Ripper.
Entering the place, it looks quite spectacular. What can you tell me about the history of the museum?
Well, we've had a museum here, and the archives were here as well, from about 1989.
Medical science has improved greatly. Can you give me any examples of what it would have been like in the olden times?
We show medical instruments and surgical instruments from the 18th century up until maybe the mid-20th century, and it shows a dramatic change in how they were used and how they were designed, from amputation saws, which were very large and very difficult to clean, pretty incredible things like cups for bloodletting and cauterizing irons for stopping bleeding. They would burn the wound. It sort of shows how really kind of primitive medicine was, to, you know, very kind of minute scalpels, suturing, and that kind of thing that was used later on is quite radical and dramatic. A very good example of something we have from the 18th century, it's the 1762 diet sheet, and it shows what patients were given. A number of things are striking. I think people were given quite a lot of butter. People probably know now that the water was very contaminated and it was safer to drink beer.
Well, leading on from that, I did notice an X-ray machine.
We have a 1930s X-ray control unit. It came over from the States, and we were using X-rays here, probably the first hospital to do so in this country, around 1896. They were only discovered the year before that, and then we realised that we could use them to look, you know, at what's inside somebody. It was a needle in a foot. We've actually got that photograph taken from the X-ray here.
Amongst the uniforms and the medical implements, what else have we got here?
Something you wouldn't associate with the London Hospital, but it's part of George Washington's false teeth.
Oh, tell me more.
Made in 1791, it's encased in a frame with a letter written by George Washington. The other half, I think, is in America. Don't know whether they'll be reunited or not.
That's interesting enough, though, isn't it? I noticed there were several prominent characters that I've heard of.
We're very well known to have an exhibit on the Elephant Man, Joseph Merrick. Initially a patient and then an inmate at the hospital in the 1880s. And his original skeleton is still a specimen in the Pathology Museum collection at the university.
So the skeleton on display here is an exact replica?
Yeah, it was made in America a few years ago, and it means that people can see his condition in a very kind of realistic way.
No visit to Whitechapel is complete without mentioning the darker side. What's the connection with Jack the Ripper with the museum?
We have one or two items on display. There's a plan of one of the crime scenes that was done by a surveyor to the City of London. And one particular murder involved our surgeon, Thomas Openshaw. And he was asked to look at a piece of a human kidney which was sent in the post to a kind of member of a vigilance committee. And we ended up with copies of letters written by Jack the Ripper to Openshaw and Mr. Lusk. This is the From Hell letter that people know about. They're the best surviving copies.